Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Futurum Tech Podcast. I'm Daniel Newman, your host, principal analyst, founding partner at Futurum Research. Excited for this special interview series edition. I've got Christian Floerkemeier. Christian is the co-founder and CTO of Scandit, a company that we've been following for a number of years. In fact, it goes back several years to a trip that I made to NRF, where I first got introduced to the technology, had a really cool introduction, talked about it in a Forbes column that I wrote. And since then, we've had a number of interactions and I've been following the company closely. Excited to have Christian here. Christian, welcome to the show.
Great to be here.
Give me a quick just background. You're one of the founders of the company. Give me the quick introduction and overview of yourself, your role, and even Scandit, because it's a really fast growth company, but I wouldn't say it's quite a household name yet.
Yeah, we're getting there. Yeah, hey, so about me personally, right? I started a long time ago. I got a degree in electrical engineering, then got a PhD in computer science, and actually worked one at the time was called the next generation barcode, which was RFID. So I was involved in an initiative at MIT called the Auto ID Labs, where we build a 900 megahertz radio frequency identification system, really with that intention of bridging the virtual and physical world with transponder technology. But I sort of stayed. I was associate director of the Auto ID Lab at MIT. Really, you helped building this out, and was sort of the origin of our company because we saw like you needed all these special devices to do data capture, right? Special purpose, real innovations, but it was innovations on the hardware side, and we started seeing these smartphones. They weren't as smart as the smartphones today, but they were smarter than the mobile phones earlier, and they all had a camera. And we were thinking like, well, hold on.
Yeah, it's really interesting to sort of see, whether it's kind of the law of diffusion of innovation or just that tipping point of which a technology goes from being kind of like I have this flip phone with a camera on it and it lets me take photos and you've got like a tiny bit of memory. I remember some of the early flip phones, the Nokia types that just had like a very low resolution camera and it was like, oh, you can capture something. And obviously there was people like you that were starting to imagine what was possible with that. I just thought like, gosh, these are really terrible photos, but I guess it's convenient to be able to do it in my pocket. And in just such a short period of time, it went from really, it was nothing more than maybe like it's nice, kind of like having a calculator on your watch, right? To it became the camera and it became legitimately a catalyst to billions of dollars of economic value. Scandit, you're a little more focused in the enterprise world, but what you do makes a big difference to consumers in the retail, especially in retail and spaces. You guys are really kind of you're pioneering this concept of smart data capture. So talk about that. Talk about what it is and like how you define it and what smart data capture encompasses.
Yeah, I mean, you hit a very valid point, right? The camera on the smartphone, in that sense, for us is really that catalyst of how to change some of those pretty mundane processes that we just have today, right? When you look at data capture as a topic that I think for as long as we had computing, in that sense, we had data capture, right? Early on, you would write things down, you would type things in, and then machine vision symbols got invented with barcodes, and you started capturing those, speeding up that transition. But in that sense, we also think about this as like slightly dumb data capture, right? Because it's one barcode at a time. It's always the kind of same interaction, right? You scan something, then you one item, you look up some inventory record, then maybe you scan the next thing, and it hasn't really evolved with the capabilities of today's computing environments, right? Because when you look at, say, we work in retail, there's a new shipment arriving, receiving, and there's 100 packages you need to go and scan. Today, data capture is still done in a very, like 30 years ago, one at a time, right? So you scan 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 packages. At package 50s, your colleague disrupts you. You answer something, then you don't remember exactly where you were. So then you continue with the next one. And you get to the end and 2 are missing. And you actually don't know, did you get it wrong now because you missed some? Or so you're going to do the whole thing again. right? And when we sort of start talking about smart data capture, it's almost like like a science fiction movie, right? Where you go and say, well, you actually don't need to go and scan each barcode and aim at it individually, but you can just take your phone, take a step back, hold that entire scene, and start scanning 20, 30, 40, 50 barcodes at the same time, and superimpose virtual information at the same time into it, where it's telling you, hey, that package actually shouldn't arrive here. That it should have gone somewhere else. So like a true augmented reality experience, where as a worker, you're shifting some of these tedious tasks to technology, and on the other hand, you're really providing additional intelligence into that scene. So as a worker, I can make better decisions, right? I see something's already expired, something shouldn't even be here, and I see that augmented in the physical world as I'm looking at it with my camera, right? And this is sort of what we really, when we talk about smart data capture, we seeing this as let's take a step forward from these old days of doing things where it's really just about like, let's do it like 10% faster, let's have 10% more range. No, let's change the entire way how we're doing some of these processes.
And Christian, I think if you if you look at the last couple of years, the amount of attention things like supply chain have gotten, right?
Yep.
I remember we were counting the number of ships off the ports of LA. Uh,
Yep.
we were talking about labor and workforce issues, potential labor strikes. A lot of the economic issues we're dealing with right now, I think most executives and business all fundamentally believe technology will be our best way out of the
Yep.
problems that we have.
Yep.
And some of it's breakthrough, super disruptive innovation. Some of it is what I'd call iterative technologies that simply just
Yep.
make workflows and processes go better. It's not always going to be like the next iPhone. I mean, even Apple hasn't really done the next iPhone in 20 years since the first iPhone. It's just a better camera and a
Yep.
faster processor, but it's always innovative because of all the ecosystem shifts that it creates, what kind of apps
Right.
you can run, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, we talked a lot about the macro, we talked about supply chain, we talked a little bit about the pandemic, new ways of work. Uh, so talk to me a little bit. I made a comment earlier, I said new work is old work, but that's not always true.
Yep.
Um, in your mind, what is sort of some of the big shifts that are making it more clear than ever that the old ways don't work?
I think when you think about in certain areas, we haven't gone back to sort of the pre-COVID times in some way, right? Like the worker shortage is still out there. When you look at this today, there's even right now where we may be entering a different macroeconomic climate, still at this point, there is still a significant worker shortage. We've seen, a gig economy that just really changed significantly how we do work in big parts of our economy, right? In some way tied to that worker shortage, of course. And with that worker shortage and associated with that also is that, people look more at, do I actually enjoy doing this job? And do I add value and do I actually enjoy doing it? So that goes hand in hand. On one hand, it's like work experience plays a much bigger role. And then on the other hand, there's a shortage of workers. So you want to make sure that you can actually run your business with less manual work just because you can't find the workers, right? And then I think when you look from a customer perspective, I think, in COVID, we've seen, a strong growth of e-commerce and e-commerce services, right? Because we frankly couldn't go to the stores. But we've also seen that we've seen this, we always talk about omni-channel, but in COVID, we've really seen omni-channel explode, right? In the sense of in-store order fulfillment, curbside pickup, and, customers in that sense got used to these services. And we're now seeing that businesses that launched these services already had them before and then scaled them are now realizing, well, like I actually need to go and look at efficiency, right? How can I run these processes better? How can I actually run them more efficiently? How can I run them with a better customer experience, right? And in-store order fulfillment is one of these examples, right? Got launched, got huge traction, but now it's a cost driver. It's a customer satisfaction thing. If you don't have accurate real-time information about what's actually the inventory information, what's available in the store, you can't actually run these processes in an accurate way, right? So there's a lot of sort of trickle effects of that boom that we've seen that now ripple through the different processes that are required to actually do these processes efficiently and at a good customer satisfaction.
Yeah, I definitely think there's quite a bit going on. I, was thinking about as you were speaking, everything from, the gig economy to labor workforce to what do employees now expect or gig workers expect when they come into the workforce. I think about, what is the customer experience that's expected by every customer going into a store? How do they want to see technology interact with products when you walk in? I still remember some of my earliest interactive experiences with like wine. I don't remember which one it was, but where you could like scan the wine bottle and you get all the information. And there's one that did like augmented labeling. It's super cool. But I'm saying like people want cooler experiences.
Yep.
Gig workers and employees want technology embedded in their work. They don't want to do mundane tasks. And of course, companies at your business and enterprise level need to be building things that remove the monotonous and mundane and repetitive tasks as much as possible just to expedite the work, right? How do you get the right products on the shelf? How do you deal with fluctuation? And then, of course, you said kind of like, how do you get full control of your inventory so that you can actually manage a multi-point of sale, e-commerce, live pickup in store, live in store? I mean, gosh, even just going back, Christian, to when you see that something's online and you say, oh, it's in the store and it's available and you want it, and then you get to the store and it's not there. And I mean, God, how frustrating. And after years, big companies with lots of technology still make these mistakes. It still happens. And maybe, maybe it shouldn't happen. Which industries and are you seeing really bite down on the potential of smart data capture? And what are you hearing in terms of the differences it's making for their workforces?
I mean, when we're looking at this and I think we're seeing our technology really resonate, especially in those verticals where there is traditionally, a lot of repetitive and somewhat tedious tasks, right? A lot of manual processes today. And I think the sort of underlying theme that we've seen is that when you really think about this, we as humans, we always think like we're really good at everything, but we really aren't, right? There's certain things that we just don't excel at, right? And there's other things that we're just incredibly good at, right? So if anything that, it's a very repetitive, tedious task, if we'll do them, what we're actually not that good at them, right? If you need to go on that example I had earlier, right? You need to go and count 100 packages. Actually, a computing system is a smart data capture system is much better at this than any human, right? But on the other hand, as a human, there's certain things that no matter how much AI will at least in the next 5, 10, 20 years, no AI system will beat us at empathy, engagement, flexibility, right? So if you're interacting with a customer, that's something that a human is in a unique position to go and do, to read between the lines, what the customer is asking for, how to best advise him, and to respond to concerns, to be flexible. We will not build engineering systems to do that, to replace a human in the short term, right? And I think what we really see with smart data capture is to support the workers in those cases where, shift some of those tedious tasks to technology. And when you look in retail, that is receiving tasks, that's shelf management, right? If you're in a retail store today, you have processes such as price label checks. Honestly, that's the most tedious job on the planet, right? And the way, when you think about how this works, right, you scan a barcode on the price label, then you look at what that price is, and then you look at the screen of your mobile device and you say, like, do they match? And if they match, great, and you move on. Otherwise, you mark it, you go back, print the ticket, and replace it, right? With smart data capture, you step 2 steps back, take a picture, scan the shelf, matches barcodes and data automatically for you. And as a human now, you do what you're best at because you react to it. You see like, these 2-3 things are wrong. Let me go and fix this, adjust this, right? Because before we build robots that, in that sense, replace those barcode labels, those shelf labels, that's a long way away, right? And again, you're sort of highlighting the flexibility of the user, right? Other examples are in just age verification, right? You can train. So when you look in a transportation logistics setting, last mile settings, right? Alcohol delivery today, a lot of states are clamping down on alcohol delivery to minors, right? As a last mile provider, it's a significant business risk for you that you lose your license to deliver alcohol. If you can no longer deliver alcohol, you can lose a large part of your market. So you're forced to train all your employees. But we talked about the gig economy earlier, to go and train gig economy workers how to do an age check, to really check all the different fields on an ID, to make sure that that actually does get executed. That's a really big task, right? Just the training, just the process monitoring, right? When you now take that to smart data capture, you just leave it to technology. The only thing is that at last mile is ask for the ID, have the computer vision software inspect the ID, say, yep, that person is above 21. You have a proof point of this. You have compliance. You don't need to train your employees beyond saying you are going to ask for your ID, otherwise you can't deliver this package. So these are just examples where smart data capture just, makes complex processes much, much easier because they can be encapsulated in technology. They're not automated. So it's still the human in the loop, but the tedious task gets shifted to technology.
Yeah, I've definitely thought a lot about that exact example with all the sort of custom tailored razors and his and hers personal goods and, order subscription, things like alcohol and tobacco that have very strict governance on delivery, how we haven't really seen big startups pop out on this yet because so much compliance, so many challenges from a compliance standpoint. But I would have to imagine like an on-demand Grubhub style alcohol service would probably do amazingly well. It also got me thinking as I was listening to you, just like you mentioned in transportation, less and last mile, but I am starting to see different parts of the world using smart data capture in airports when you're boarding planes. So instead of a ticket, you walk up, it scans your face, and that's the way it actually knows that you're the person that's boarding the plane with the ticket. And I imagine we're going to see a lot more of that to basically validate IDs. And this is both from a safety standpoint, from a validation standpoint, to basically utilize computer vision over old school barcodes and tickets and things that really. And by the way, like you said, puts a lot of risk in those people, like the people at the gate or the people at the ticket counter that are like, they're not professional ID inspectors. So these are things smart capture can help fix.
And I think since you mentioned the airport example, right? There's the training aspect to it, but there's also there's a complexity and TCO aspect to it, right? So when you think about the typical gate today, we work very closely with Alaska Airlines, and they sort of looked at their typical boarding gate, right? There is a keyboard that reads the credit card. There is a screen, there's a PC, there's a barcode reader attached to it. So when you think about all these, and every single one of these components can fail. So think about this from an IT complexity perspective, right? So you already have like then you have a printer. So you have 4 or 5 crucial components, each of which can fail independently. And you need to go and train your boarding agents how to go and use them, right? And we've seen Alaska Airlines very successfully saying, well, no, we're going to do this different. We just have one device, an iPad. We just have one device on which we do everything. We do the passport checks. We do and even if in that case, you're still operating boarding passes, right? So to your example, there's still boarding passes. They might be digital, but you're still reading a machine vision symbol, but you have one device. And to our earlier point, right? It's a smart device with a built-in camera, and that's all you have, right? So in that sense, now it has many benefits because every of your employees know how to use an app, right? Or I'd say that I think it's probably true to say every, right? It's a very different thing if you need to go and be trained to use an MS-DOS alike user interface on an old PC where you can maybe do the same process in 8 different ways. How to use an app, if it's well done, is very straightforward to most folks these days, right? So you, rather than training someone for 10 weeks how to run all these different processes in their existing environment, it's now a half a day process. This is the app, these are the processes, you're familiar with the device, everything is integrated, right? So we're seeing smart data capture really being a crucial part of these digital transformation processes where I'm not just, in that sense, smart data capture is just a component of an overall over the entire sort of worker experience, where I'm really looking at every single process I had, and I'm start thinking, how do I bring this into an app, into a real good example? But and the example I always list, and maybe that's my last comment on this, is what I always tell our customers, saying like, look, in COVID times, there were businesses out there that scaled. When you start thinking about, in-store order fulfillment and e-commerce, that scaled within a couple of weeks, according to their press releases, they added 200, 300,000 gig workers, which in some way, when you think about this, is crazy, right? If we were running a business and I'd come to you and I say like, hey, within 8 weeks, we're gonna bring on 200, 300,000 workers, you would say, are you nuts? That's crazy, right? But they managed because there was really good digital experience available, an app that did the training, there was good smart data capture built in, so it actually allowed you to scale, right? And I think we've seen that example. We've seen this in airlines, we've seen this in retail, we've seen this, in this in-store order fulfillment, and it just shows the potential of smart data capture and in these digital transformation projects.
The holy grail, right, is always build once and sell many. That's the holy grail. And I think these apps, it's build once, sell many, and be able to scale like unbelievable agility. So we're coming to the end of our time, Christian. We got, I got maybe a minute or two, and I got one more question for you. We've sort of started to allude to it, but more in the present tense. Where does this go? Like, give me, you're the, from your experience back in the RFID days and building and innovating to now where we are today. Where does smart data capture go in the next couple of years?
I think from our perspective, we will always have like a user interface, right? And the phone will be prevalent. I think we're going to start seeing, eventually digital eyewear playing a bigger role. But we start, today it's sort of integrated in one device, the smart data capture and the user experience. We expect that we will have more of a distributed system, in the sense where we already have that today. We power robots that drive up and down retail aisles to observe what's going on, to do data capture at scale. But then with that intelligence that you're deriving, they are driving humans to be, faster and in that sense do their job better with the intelligence they're getting. So we're expecting cameras to be more omnipresent, from stationary cameras, robot cameras, on drones, and just expect those to be more prevalent, interpreting our physical world, and then feeding, us workers to make better decisions, and in that sense focus on things that we like doing, as opposed to the tedious things where today we still marking things by hand, and recording things by hand.
There you have it, Christian. I want to thank you so much for joining me here on the Futurum Tech Podcast. This is a fascinating, it's a fascinating space to keep an eye on. I think often we become somewhat just apathetic about the technology at our disposal. It's like, oh, I've got this, supercomputer. You go back to that time you were at MIT studying in 01 to 05 and doing RFID, and what we literally hold in our hand, these devices, would be considered high performance supercomputers back in those days. How far we come and how fast we come. I love your prediction about augmented. I mean, I think the metaverse, buzzword or not, Christian, I think the idea of immersion being, I said this the other day, I said, we're going to, the mistake right now is that people think we're going to go to the immersion. The immersion is going to come to us, meaning when it's really going to work, this has all been proven, if we want to come full circle, to us going back to events, meaning we want the digital experience, but we want to do it in the physical world. Smart data capture is going to be a certain tool to enable us to get there. So I want to thank you so much. I really enjoyed having you here. Let's have you come back sometime soon. Let's keep up with the Scandit story. Congratulations on the success, and have a great one.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
All right, thanks everyone for tuning in here. Hit that subscribe button, check out those show notes, learn more about Scandit, what the company is doing. Very interesting company. There's a reason I've been following it, and there's a reason we will at Futurum Research continue to follow what Scandit is doing. But for this episode, I got to tune out, say bye-bye now. Thanks for being part of the Futurum Tech Podcast community. See you later.